So State Department spokesperson Matt Miller was at the podium yesterday, and he started discussing why the ceasefire broke down and why he alleges that some of the women who are being held hostage by Hamas were not ultimately released. And he says this thing, which apparently was pure conjecture, that it seems maybe they weren't released because Hamas doesn't want them to come out and say what they were subjected to. And in the very same press briefing, he is forced to admit that he just made this up and actually has no evidence for these, pretty inflammatory and extraordinary claims that he just casually put out there. Let's take a listen to his original comments and also the pushback that he received, the admission he had to make.
They continue to hold women hostages, the fact that they continue to hold children hostages, the fact that it seems one of the reasons they don't want to turn women over that they've been holding hostage, and the reason this pause fell apart, is they don't want those women to be able to talk about what happened to them during their time in custody.
The fact that it seems,
Maybe,
is this just conjecture on your part, or do you know? Do you have very good reason to believe, evidence to believe that Hamas is deliberately continuing to hold on to female hostages because they're concerned that they will speak about atrocities that they were subjected to?
So I will accept the edit, not fact. Seems is a better way to say it, but let me answer the question. I won't say fact because I don't know it for a fact.
Oh, okay, but when you say a number of people believe,
let me just say
people in the U.S. government.
Let me just finish my answer. We have seen Hamas commit all kinds of atrocities.
Look,
I'm
a little bit concerned. You're trying to. I am not suggesting that these things did not happen, and I am not suggesting that what you suggest is their reason for not releasing the remaining female hostages is wrong. I just want to know.
I just want to be very sensitive in my language.
Any evidence to suggest that is what it is, or is it just?
I want to be very sensitive in my language when talking about people that continue to be held hostage, that have families on the outside. What I will say is we know Hamas has committed atrocities. We know they continue to hold women. Yeah. They were going to release these women, and then suddenly at the last point reneged on the deal and were never able to provide a credible reason why. We hope that they will change their mind and release those women.
So, but you don't know though for certain that or a reason for them reneging on the deal and not releasing them is because they're worried about them speaking about.
So I'm not able to speak with a definitive assessment that is the case.
So this was pure conjecture, just floated. And let's be clear what he's honestly floating here. He's basically implying that these women are raped. They were raped by Hamas, and that's why they're being held back, because Hamas doesn't want them to come out and tell the world what happened. He floats this and has to admit that there's no evidence to back it up. Now, that's not before, though. There are, the original comments saying it seems this is what happened, picked up by any number of members of the press and, tweeted out.
The Israeli government, too.
And spread like wildfire, and the Israeli government, before he then has to walk it back. And this is disgraceful on any number of levels. I mean, first of all, there should be some expectation that U.S. government officials, when they say something from the podium like that it is based in some sort of evidence, fact, and reality, not just speculating for the sake of speculating. So that's number one. Number two, and Matt Miller himself sort of alludes to this, imagine you're one of the families of these women and you hear a U.S. government official implying that your mom, your sister, your aunt, your grandma has been raped, and that's why she's being still held by Hamas. Imagine that. Just imagine that. And then he has to admit, no, I just made that up effectively. It's disgusting. And you can never imagine them doing this in the other direction of just sort of casually, maybe the IDF raped this woman. Do I have any proof? No, I don't have any proof, but I'm just going to go ahead and say it from the podium as State Department spokesperson.
That's the key. Look, I mean, they're not, maybe we wouldn't put it past them. Luckily, and this is the other thing, it's almost like everyone wants this to be true. Thank God, so far, no female hostage yet, as far as I understand it, has reported being raped. Thank God for that. having Krystal, you and I sat here with the brother of one of those hostages who,
That's
thank
right.
God, was released. And seems, at least she has not reported anything as such. If she does, we'll absolutely update people here on this show. Now, there's a lot of, investigation into some of the things and the claims and all of that have been made. And when it bears out, what bears out to be true is very important. But it's also important not to just wildly speculate from the podium for the exact reasons that you said. And if that was the case, then the U.S. government should say, based on intelligence assessment, we believe that this is why. I mean, that's a shocking story in its own right. But then for them to, on the very first question, Matt Lee, by the way, works for the Associated Press. He is one of the best reporters in all of Washington. He sees through the BS. He cuts through every administration, right and left, and he knows things like the back of his hand. And I'm very glad that he asked that follow-up. Also, too, that the families of those who are held could see that, because the inverse of if that was true, then you should really be resigned to, oh my God, these people never may be released. And if it's not true, then you can say and maintain some hope that a future ceasefire, future negotiation or something like that could materialize. Anyway, I think it was absolutely outrageous and irresponsible the way that he handled that, because, as you said, it was immediately I saw it spread by the Israeli government and others, and that's just the worst thing you can imagine if you're one of the families of the people who are being held. And all we want is for those people to come home, and I hope that they're being treated, in a humane fashion. Can't guarantee or anything like that, but yeah, I thought it was crazy, absolutely crazy that he just spread that.
Yeah, 100%. And here's the other thing is when you, as that reporter did, raise questions about, well, do you have any evidence of this? I mean, the risk is you end up looking like you're some sort of rape or Hamas apologist, when in reality, there is plenty of good reason to doubt what this government has said during this time period. Joe Biden had to apologize because he, had downplayed the number of civilian deaths and doubted the civilian death toll. He has repeated some claims about the specifics of the atrocities, which were real on October 7th, but some of the specifics of the claims he played up turned out to be completely untrue. The Netanyahu government certainly has been spreading multiple falsehoods. And this is not according to me, Crystal Ball. This is according to Haaretz, leading Israeli newspaper that did an investigation into some of the most horrifying claims that were being made about the atrocities on October 7th, and the gruesome nature of which have been used to justify the gruesome assault that is occurring right now on Gaza. Put this up on the screen from Haaretz. I'll go through a few of these. I recommend you read this entire report, which is in English, so it's easily accessible. The headline here is, "The Hamas massacre led to the spread of horror stories, not all of which happened in reality. The truth is hard enough," which I would just echo. Listen, not denying that there were horrors committed by Hamas on October 7th, but some of these stories turned out to be completely baseless. One of the most, infamous at this point is the story about 40 babies being murdered. In some cases, they were described as beheaded. That report was quoted on social media, often referenced as, quote, dozens of beheaded babies. Sometimes it was burnt babies. Sometimes it was hanged babies. The foreign ministry published an account from a colonel from the Home Front Command who said that in one house, he found the bodies of 8 burnt babies. You also had the Prime Minister Office's Twitter account spreading this similar claims about the murder of a large number of infants, including graphic pictures that they said that Netanyahu showed to Tony Blinken. Well, it turns out that, listen, I hate to use the word only, but there was one baby who was killed during these horrors. Now, that's obviously one baby too many that was killed here. But the reports of 40 babies beheaded, burnt babies, baby in the oven, baby on the clotheslines, et cetera, none of these turned out to be true. The truth of what happened on October 7th is horrific enough. But these, intentional embellishments and gruesome stories, again, are used to sort of justify the response and the atrocities here. But that's far from all. There was also claims by Netanyahu that there were, quote, dozens of children that Hamas tied them up, burned them, and executed them. This also on every level, both in terms of the numbers of children who were killed by Hamas on that day, and also the nature and manner that they were killed. None of this was accurate whatsoever. There was a horrific story about a pregnant woman whose baby was cut out of her and then stabbed. This also turns out not to be true. And then the last one that I'll mention here, and there were a number of others in this Haaretz story that were debunked as well, but the prime minister's wife, Sarah Netanyahu, wrote a letter to our first lady, Jill Biden. She wrote that a woman who was taken hostage was in her 9th month of pregnancy when she was abducted, and that she gave birth while she was being held hostage. The woman that they claimed was pregnant was not pregnant. She has now been released. She did not have a baby. She was not pregnant at any point. So again, this lie was spread from the First Lady of Israel to the First Lady of the United States. And, you know, you feel horrible talking about these things because they make you feel like you're downplaying what happened on October 7th. I'm not downplaying what happened on October 7th, but it's important that there be some fealty to truth, accuracy, and reality in the events that unfolded on that day. And now you have both the Netanyahu government and our own government caught in multiple lies. So yes, of course, people have every right at this point to not take what these government officials are saying at face value, to demand evidence for every single claim that is being made here from their podium, our podium, Matt Miller, Joe Biden, or anyone else in between.
Yeah, as you said, small lies beget big lies. It calls into question credibility, and many lies are often spread in order to inflame emotional tensions to a point where you can justify a different policy. This is a time-honored tradition. You can look no past our WMD lie whenever it came to Iraq, for a more potent example. But these things are a facet of warfare from the history, you know, going all the way back to whenever you have recorded history about what people would say about what others have done, and propaganda, and used explicitly for certain purposes. And I just think the number one message that we've been trying to spread here is you better be careful. Don't fall victim to this yourself, because it's an emotional tool that is being used by great effect by a lot of people who are in power.
Yeah, and another thing that we've seen throughout this conflict is an effort to downplay the amount of civilian death. I referenced before Joe Biden calling into question the numbers and then privately apologizing for having done that and pledging that he'll, quote unquote, do better. There have been all of these viral fake stories about the quote unquote Hollywood conspiracy, that all of these, you know, children being pulled from the rubble and all these horrific scenes that we're seeing. These are actually many of them crisis actors. Well, we had one of these that actually got picked up by one of the largest English language Israeli media outlets, the Jerusalem Post. Put this up on the screen. So there was this theory going around that this 5-month-old baby who had been killed in an Israeli airstrike, that, you know, a photojournalist took pictures of his grieving father and family holding this baby. There was this myth floating around and conspiracy theory that this was actually a doll. Again, part of minimizing the civilian catastrophe that's unfolding here. And the Jerusalem Post actually published a story claiming that this was not a real human child who had been killed, that this was a doll. They then, after confronted with the evidence that, no, this is a real baby who was killed here, had to delete that fake story and apologize for posting it. But this sort of stuff is just running rampant. And again, this is a supposedly, you know, quote unquote, credible outlet that just ran with a wild conspiracy theory based on absolute garbage.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the baby doll, the Pallywood that we've talked here previously and more. Anyway, I just want people to take this away as you need to be very clear about what you're ingesting, what you're spreading, about what you can say is actually a matter of fact. You should question the government too, because they can fold almost immediately in terms of things. And much of it is being done in order to justify many things that are being done with, you know, for U.S. policy, for Israeli policy. We've seen and we've shown previous examples here from the Palestinian side as well. So yeah, it's a terrible facet of war. Krystal, we've got Congressman Ro Khanna standing by. So any final thoughts that you want to say before you sign off?
No, I'll be back on Thursday. And thank you guys, as always, for watching.
Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.